Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to continue our look at Quack. We're up to number 3 here, and we start off with a nice cover by Dave Sim, inked by Steve Leialoha. This is kind of interesting to see this because this is like pre-Cerebus. Maybe Cerebus was just starting around this time because this came out in April 77. And so maybe Cerebus had just started, but whatever. It's interesting seeing pre-Cerebus Dave Sim. It's interesting seeing Dave Sim not draw Cerebus. I mean, he spent his whole life doing it. And his non-Cerebus work is, very little. I don't know how they didn't get sued here. We have an obvious Howard the Duck right on the cover. And this features his characters, the Beavers, who we shall see shortly. Pretty nice cover. We have an introduction by Mike Friedrich, and now we have the Beavers. This is drawn completely by Dave Sim. And we see these two Beavers, and they're talking about the latest issue of Howard the Duck, obviously. Instead of the space turnip, it's the Martian nectarine. And it's weird, though. In his hands, though, he's holding Quack. So, a little mistake there. Meanwhile, in the background, we see this Howard the Duck doppelganger. And while they're talking about Howard in the comics getting zapped by the Martian nectarine, all of a sudden this bolt comes out of the sky and fries this Howard the Duck character. Really nice cartooning there. This is some classic funny animal cartooning. Really nice. It's interesting Dave Sim already had his shit together, even before Cerebus. One of the Beavers is talking about how it's like, yeah, but you can't empathize with this duck. That's the basis of humor. It's not like here in Canada. We would never. And he basically chastises his friend. He says, "I can't believe you would go in for such unsubtle humor. It's so American. Nothing more American than a cheap laugh." And we see that a safe is dropped on the Howard the Duck character. And the one Beaver says, "Fortunately, Canada isn't like that. Our humor is sophisticated." And he starts rattling off all these, I guess, famous Canadian cartoonists that I don't know who they are. And then his second safe is dropped on Howard. And then that one Beaver says, it's important that we Canadian comic characters, continue the high level of sophistication and excellence and, taste and judgment. And while he's saying that, pontificating, we see the hand of the artist Dave Sim whiting out his tail and drawing in a flower. The other Beaver sees it and just kind of chuckles while this guy just keeps blabbering on. I love the conceit of the strip that, Dave Sim's a Canadian. So he's making this kind of lowbrow humor strip, but the whole time commenting on, how lowbrow humor's not good. Next, we have another great Wraith story. I like this introduction. It starts off with this character, Scrooge McFowl, and the way he draws him, it's unmistakable. It's Scrooge McDuck. He's like even more bastardly. He's talking about bribes and tax loopholes and graft and corruption. And now he's off to collect an overdue mortgage from a poor old widow. And meanwhile, though, in the background, we see this kind of actually Wraith-like figure. Almost looks like a ghost. He's walking down this alley. He feels like he's being followed because he is. And this guy confronts him. Scrooge McFowl recognizes him. He says, "You're the living reality of the great American dream. My 3 young nephews would love an autograph." But he pulls out a knife and he stabs Scrooge right in the back. I love this title page, Duck Death. Really, really nice looking page. So the next day, it's all over the news. The inspector, who's like the Commissioner Dolan of this strip, he's the Commissioner Dolan to the Wraith spirit. He's just totally under fire. The mayor's calling him, all these reporters. This is just huge news. He's beat. And the Wraith is just kind of like, sucks to be you. Kind of unsympathetic. And he also has to deal with Stan Flea from the awful ad agency wants police protection. And on top of that, his sister sent her daughter, his niece, to come stay with him for a while. And here she comes, Ivory. And she's going to be a major character in the Wraith from now on. Obviously, Ivory, Ebony. Even though she's very different. She's not a racial caricature. Maybe she is of an albino. And Ivory is kind of starstruck by the Wraith. They take a liking to each other instantly. And then the inspector kind of cajoles the Wraith into going to Stan Flea's agency and taking Ivory with him. He's like, yeah, you could show her what inspector work is like. So he pawns her off on the Wraith. While they're walking to the ad agency, in the background we see Dingy Duck and his friend Weasel, who are obviously it's Bobby London's Dirty Duck, a parody. It's so crazy. Dingy Duck is saying, "Come, Weasel, let's molest some children." On the rooftop here, we see that villain, and he drops a heavy block right on Dingy Duck and Weasel and kills them. I kind of like this effect for this villain. He almost looks like a ghost with this, I don't know, just interesting shading. So they make it to the awful ad agency. They meet Stan Flea, obviously a parody of Stan Lee. He says Excelsior. He's very full of himself. And apparently his big new ad campaign is for the squid-flavored douche. So stupid. And he even has an art director named Jazzy Johnny. And Flea tells the Wraith about his, basically his biggest spokesperson, Harvard the Duck. And, but while he's hanging out with the Wraith, he says, "Oh, I need a new face. And I think you would be great for our superhero campaign for the douche company." And so he imagines all this ad campaign where the Wraith would be Flash Wraith, Captain Wraith, Wonder Wraith, Spider Wraith, Sergeant Wraith, Charlie Wraith. And all of the ad lines they're using kind of match up to the character. The Flash Gordon analog is saying Spacey. Captain Marvel analog saying Marvelous. The Sergeant Wraith analog saying kills odors. And the Charlie Brown one's saying sells for peanuts. I also like this, the wash technique here, in contrast with the sharp line work. Because this is just Stan Flea's imagination. So it's a really good technique. Meanwhile, Harvard the Duck comes in right then. And he's like, "What do you mean you're going to replace me?" And he's a really foul-tempered little shit. The Wraith and Ivory take an instant dislike to him. Harvard's he's just like so angry. He's like Howard the Duck times 10. He kind of threatens the Wraith. He says, "Watch your step," and then takes off. And so the Wraith says, "We should tail that guy. He could be a suspect." Meanwhile, we see Baby Huey. They don't change the name, it's just spelled differently. And the villain says, "Hey, would you hold on to this wire for a second?" He zaps him. Baby Huey's so naive and dumb that it's not hard to kill him. So they're tailing Harvard. And then all of a sudden, Daffy Drake shows up. And he's like, "Hey, Ivory." I guess they know each other. And he's like, "Somebody just gave me this box." And it blows up. There's a bomb inside. I like this how we see his feathers, and they even like fall all over here into these next panels. So the Wraith thinks he's got it all figured out. He's like, it's that newsboy. He's the killer in disguise. That's why he's at the scene of the crime right afterwards, which is a pretty bad theory. Meanwhile, Harvard the Duck runs into the villain. He pulls a gun on Harvard. I like how Harvard's just like, listen, fuckface, is this your idea of a joke? That's just a water pistol, but it's full of acid. And then right then, the Wraith and Ivory show up to save the day. The villain escapes or runs away, and the Wraith in heavy pursuit. Look how weird this panel is here. It's like these buildings are like, I don't know, something from like, what do they call that? Like German Expressionism, the like Caligari, Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. And then this weird business going on, like it's dripping down. I don't know why he did that, but it looks kind of cool. And so the Wraith catches up to the guy and pummels him. And he pulls him out of the alley, half conscious. All these reporters are waiting. And they say, the killer, look, it's Stan Flea. But it's a misdirection. It's not Stan Flea at all. He just happens to be in the crowd. This is kind of a goofy misdirect. And then the Wraith unmasks him. And turns out to be Colonel Chicken, the Kentucky Fried Cockroach King. So, he basically says, you caught me, but gather around and I'll tell you why I hate ducks. So he even says quietly, your pencil's ready, boys? And he gives this totally histrionic performance. Look at his body language here. He's prancing around and doing all these dramatic poses. And he tells the story of rags to riches. He started this huge Kentucky Fried Cockroach franchise empire. But then because ducks became so popular, nobody cared about cockroaches anymore. And so he went out of business. All of his franchises went belly up. And he says, that is why I hate ducks. And the reporters go wild. They're like, wow, what a performance. Play it again, Sam. And then Stan Flea basically starts cozying up to Colonel Chicken. He says, hey, man, after that speech, you got to come work for me. And Ivory says, hey, but I thought you wanted to use the Wraith in your ad campaign. And Stan Flea, of course, is just like, he's yesterday's news. And the Wraith shoves a piece of Kentucky Fried Cockroach right in Stan Flea's mouth. And they walk off. Wraith and Ivory walk off into the sunset. Next we have Easy Wolf as Wolfjack in The Case of the Missing Quack by Ted Richards. Just love Ted Richards' cartooning, just so nice. And so this is just Easy Wolf, the same setting, but all of a sudden he's a detective. He hears this dog howling, and he has a hunch that it's old Huncher, Brer Bill Goat's coonhound. So he goes up to Brer Bill Goat's place, sees the dog like half dead and all these duck feathers around. Brer Bill Goat's nowhere to be found. The Sheriff Alabama shows up. I love his design. And he at first thinks Wolfjack's up to some, he's being a ne'er-do-well. But then he realizes that, okay, I got no evidence, whatever. So then Wolfjack is back in his office. And just like in every film noir, a beautiful woman walks in. Well, she's a duck. And she says, my husband, I need to find him. His name's Dr. Quincy Quack. He's a nuclear scientist who perfected a process that would convert a tree into a barrel of oil. Of course, the Arab oil cartels didn't like this, and they've been basically threatening them ever since. So her husband left town, left the big city, and went to find some small town to hide. So she's been looking for him ever since. She starts throwing money around, so of course Wolfjack says, we'll be able to work something out. Meanwhile, Wolfjack goes to get his normal breakfast of a moon pie and RC Cola, and there's a note in his moon pie. It says, look for the Quack in the alley behind Shaver's barbershop. When he goes back there, he sees this federal agent just gored as if a lion, tore at his guts. The sheriff shows up again and tries to pin this on Wolfjack. But when they compare notes, it turns out they've both been had, because Sheriff Alabama, in his banana dream cake, he got a note that says Wolfjack will attempt to kill a federal agent behind the barbershop. So it turns out, Sheriff Alabama, he basically says, oh shit, man, this federal agent's killed in our little town. This place is going to be swarming with feds. And he says, Wolfjack, you better go check on your still. They're going to be out for blood. So Wolfjack goes up to his still with old Huncher, the dog. And he can't find Bill anywhere. Bill's his partner in the still. But he does find this little door in a hillock. And when he goes inside, there's this laboratory. His friend Bill is tied up. And it turns out that Dr. Quack tied him up. And he's like, we got to get out of here. He's crazy. He's got this machine here, which is, he even talks to it. And I think it's we'll all be dead if he ever finishes this machine. And then the Quack comes down. Wolfjack grabs him. He's just a little guy, not that threatening. And he basically talks about his wife, the one who came to Wolfjack's office. And he says, no, not Dagmar. She's a no-good strumpet. She'll have me killed. She betrayed me, sold me out. And he says, let me just finish my machine. I just need this one part. And then Dagmar shows up with the Cat Man, who, I don't know who this is, but apparently he's a big evil mastermind. They didn't really introduce him earlier or mention him. So basically she's teamed up with the Cat Man. She wants this machine that'll turn trees into oil. And he says, listen, Dagmar, just let me finish the machine. You can have it when I'm done. It's gotten to the point where I just want to see it work, just to prove that I'm, my genius. And then you can have it. Let me just finish it. So he does. And then he says, ha, I lied. This is actually an antimatter bomb. It'll destroy everything. And Dagmar says, why are you doing this? And he basically tells everyone the story about how Dagmar slept with everyone, all of his colleagues, the whole football team. And so now he just wants to destroy the whole world. He presses the button and the thing fritzes out. It doesn't work. And then Catman says, Pusai, pussies, and the cats all over him attack Quack. The dog gets in the way, tussles with them for a little, and then the cats, they're turned crazy after a minute or two with old Huncher, and they leap at the Catman. They're so crazed, they attack their master, and they rip his guts out. So it turns out Catman was the one who killed that federal agent in the alley. The cats return to normal after he's dead. Sheriff Alabama shows up, and somehow Dr. Quack makes up with his wife, and they walk off into the sunset. And then later on, Wolfjack and Bill use this fancy machinery just to make better booze. I think the computer's got it figured out this time. Kind of cute little story, but mainly I love Ted Richards cartooning. It's perfect. You-All Gibbon, the junk food monkey in Pigfoot, the awful boar. And once again, story art by Scott Shaw. And lettering by a very young Carol Leigh. I think before she took up the pen herself to cartoon. So You-All Gibbons is hanging out with his nephew and kind of complaining about what a bitch it is to take care of Dogzilla, who he basically adopted after last issue. He's pooping everywhere. He's got to buy truckloads of dog food. And then all of a sudden they hear gunshots and they run outside, and it's Hunter S. Thompson, Scott Shaw's character, who's obviously a Hunter S. Thompson knockoff. And he's firing at Dogzilla for pooping on his car. So they kind of settle things down. And Hunter S. Thompson tells them why he's out there. He got a new assignment to find Pigfoot. I like this on this talk show. They're interviewing Boris J. Quackerman of Funny Monsters of Fameland. So, of course, Hunter S. Thompson's like, nobody's ever even seen the Bigfoot or Pigfoot. This is going to be a really difficult assignment. But the nephew says, hey, I'm an outdoorsy type. I'll help you out. Let's go find him. Meanwhile, Dogzilla, basically, You-All Gibbons figures he could track Pigfoot by his scent. And we see Pigfoot running behind this billboard, and Dogzilla's in hot pursuit. He sees a giant footprint near a cave, and he goes inside the cave. He sees prehistoric cartoons on the wall, and he's, he lost track of Dogzilla, so he thinks Dogzilla's in there, so he's calling for him. And when he comes out the other side of the cave, he's in a prehistoric land, the land that time ignored. Continued next issue. Next we have another nice Ken Macklin story. I kind of wish somebody would collect all of Ken Macklin's various stories. He's got so many little stories and anthologies over the years. Here's another well-drawn and well-written one. We see this guy, he signed up for the Space Corps, but they have him on this backwater planet for 10 years, just flying experimental aircraft. And it's a shit assignment. He's just like, I got 7 years left. This sucks. I gotta get out of here. So one day they want him to try this new space warp ship, a ship that will actually defy the physical laws of space. And he figures, this is my only chance. For once, I'm flying a ship that, if I do decide to take off, they can't follow me. And he says, so long, folks. Suck a moose, Colonel. Over and out. And he hits the space warp button before they can fire on him. And he makes a clean escape. The guys left behind are like, lucky jerk. Because everyone there wants to get out of there. And so, after a few weeks of space travel, he finds himself on this little planet. I love this look of him with his hair growing out. And this planet's kind of like a paradise, but there's nothing there. He's hungry, doesn't even know if there's any food. And then there's a guy who lives there, comes over, and he's some kind of old hermit. And he basically tells him that, this time of year, there's only cranberries to eat. That's it. And you'll have to find your own. And so meanwhile, there's a these aliens who have just landed on the same planet. And they said, oh, we landed here because we saw this strange spacecraft landed, his spacecraft. And then one of the aliens goes in to talk to his lieutenant and says, there's a bright young lad out there who wants to enlist. So after all that work to escape, he's just like, I don't want to be stuck on this jerkwater planet. I'm just going to join up with another Space Corps and probably get another shitty assignment. Nice one. Okay, next we have the return of Newton the Rabbit Wonder. And in this one, he meets the Barbarian Bunny. So it's weird, like there's this huge, weird jump from last issue. That woman that he teamed up with last issue, what was her name, Kitty or something? She's just gone. And, they were floating around in space last time we saw them. And it seemed like they had this real connection, but now she's gone. And for some reason, he's teamed up with this little kid. And, what's his name? Sherman, the Wandering Boy, or the Wondering Boy. And it's just very odd. But I really don't care, because this story and art by Steve Leialoha, like last time, Sergio Agonis did this story last time, but inks by Alex Niño. Look at this gorgeous stuff. I mean, what a team. I don't think these guys ever teamed up before. We see Newton and Sherman on this planet somewhere, and this scary looking monster comes out of nowhere. And then Elric shows up with a K, I guess. Oh, I forgot to mention this. All names have been changed to protect, and the innocent has been crossed out, and it says Michael Moorcock. So Elric with a K shows up, and he dispels this giant dinosaur-looking thing, who turns out to be just almost like a puppy dog. Oh, God, every panel in here, I love this art. This inking's crazy. And it's a pretty dead-on parody of Elric. Like, he's always spouting this kind of self-pitying, whatever, kind of pompous talk. And so I guess Elric tells them that his girlfriend has been kidnapped by this evil wizard. And he says, come, follow me. Little cameo from Howard the Duck. Just all he's saying is page 3. God, there's some beautiful stuff here. Elric's got to fight his way through these, demons. These demon specters with his magic sword. I'm trying to see the name of the sword. I know it has a funny name. I can't find it. Oh, it's called Soul Sucker instead of Stormbringer. So they make it to the wizard's castle, Death Castle. It looks like a little cabin, but like Doctor Who's TARDIS, it's giant inside. I love that panel too, with all the shadow. And so the wizard's trying to zap him. Newton and Sherman are running away. And then we see the girlfriend. Her name's something like Thanotina. And she's trapped in this crystal orb on top of this giant, kind of statue. So Sherman and Newton and Elric's little buddy here, they try to knock it over to free her. And they do. And we find out that she's not just some ingenue. She's actually the daughter of death. And Newton's Elric's isn't she wonderful? So we see her in all her glory. She summons this giant, I don't know if this is the same dinosaur from the beginning, and he just swallows the wizard whole. And so there's a happy ending. And then Thanatina sends our heroes off to somewhere, hopefully back to his own dimension. And we have a little teaser panel for next issue, Range Rabbit. So it looks like Newton is going to be going to the Old West. Steve Leialoha, thanks for inspiration. Michael Moorcock, Jim Starlin, John Pound, and Alex Niño. I wonder if those guys helped him out on these pages. Some of those guys. And then we have a beautiful back cover by Steve Leialoha. This is so weird. This is so groovy. This art. This looks like those giant coloring posters in the early 70s where they just have all these intricate line art, kind of groovy art like this that you could color in with crayons and stuff. But that is so nice. This Elric. Man, I wish there was more Newton stories. I think we're gonna get that what was it called? Range Rabbit story next issue. And then after that, I don't think when Quack ended, there's no more Newton stories ever made again. So another fine issue of Quack. I hope you guys like looking at it. I'll be looking at number 4, probably within the week's end, and maybe even sooner. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time here at the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.